Is bodybuilding functional? So I'm gonna be voicing the reasons it might be functional, the reasons it might not be functional, and then my personal opinion. This is an open discussion, so leave me your thoughts in the comments. I'll be curious to see what you guys think about this, and whether you guys think it's functional or not. It's a common thing to say bodybuilding isn't functional. That's why I thought, let me look at it from another perspective. Is it actually really not functional? So why doesn't it seem functional? The reason it doesn't seem functional is because bodybuilders don't seem athletic. Let's just be fair. They don't seem athletic. If you look at a bodybuilder play a sport, if you look at them box, they look stiff. If you look at them run, they look awkward. If you look at them play like basketball, football, they just don't tend to move in a way that looks athletic, right? They tend to seem quite stiff and awkward and just non-athletic, and that makes it seem like it's not functional, because in a sense, if you're a bodybuilder, it doesn't make you a functional boxer. It doesn't make you a functional sprinter or a functional endurance runner or a functional gymnast or a functional footballer, basketballer, right? But does that make it not functional? Whatever. But it's not functional for those sports, that's for sure. Another reason people say it's not functional, I believe, is based off insecurities. You see a buff person, even from the perspective, personally, I'm of the perspective that there's no point in having show muscles that are solely built for looks. It still looks cold. Let's just be completely fair. Even as a fighter, it still looks cold to see an amazing physique, right? So I think I'm off the perspective that some people that make bodybuilding seem so not functional are just people that aren't that big, right? People that are insecure, basically. So they go, well, bodybuilders aren't athletic. They're not functional. That training's completely pointless. And fair dues, you are just training for appearance. Potentially, that's your only goal. But pro bodybuilders, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's what the perspective ends up being. I don't like so-and-so. He's a lot bigger than me. Well, he's not functional. My training's actually better, even though I think his physique looks better than mine, that type thing. Now, I'm going to flip the perspective. Why could bodybuilding potentially be functional? Well, there are no neglected muscle groups. So more time, if you're training for a sport, you might train, like if you're doing jump training, for example, that's not necessarily a sport, but just vertical jump training. You might not train your hamstrings as much as is necessary. You might not train your upper body as much as is necessary. If you're training for fighting, most of your leg training might come from running. Then your upper body, you might train a little bit. So are you really balanced? If you're a footballer, you might just train legs and not really train upper body because it's not necessary for your sport. You might be functional in your sport, but it doesn't make you functional for everyday activities. So although bodybuilding might not be functional for those sports, because you're not neglecting muscle groups, overall, it's more functional in general. You've got a healthier, more functional body for everyday life. You might not be functional for a sport, but everyday life does seem more functional. Along with that, the muscle groups that you are training in bodybuilding are trained from every direction, in every single movement, basically. So if you're doing, let's say, powerlifting, right? It's seen as more functional than bodybuilding. If you ask most people, I'm sure that's what they would say. But in powerlifting, you're just bench pressing, squatting, and deadlifting. Where's the overhead press? Where's the pull? The vertical pull? The horizontal pull? Where's that? When you really start to break it down, you realize that you're training, if you're powerlifting, and obviously people tend to do complementary exercises that help with the movement. So it doesn't mean that they just do those 3 big lifts. But the point is, the emphasis is those 3 big lifts. Whereas in bodybuilding, you're not training movements, you're training muscles. And that is a very functional thing. Training the muscle leads to a healthy muscle, a muscle that works well. If you just train push, for example, you're doing a bunch of bench press, doing a bunch of push-ups, whatever sport you're doing, you end up having very developed front delts, but your side delts tend to be lacking, and your rear delts. If you're doing calisthenics, and if you ask most people, I'm sure most people would assume calisthenics is more functional than bodybuilding. If you look, obviously you can still bodybuild with calisthenics, you get what I'm saying, right? If you look at calisthenics, more time calisthenics athletes are doing pull-ups, push-ups, and dips. Where's the legs? And those who are doing legs tend to just do squats. Where's the hinging movement? Where's the hamstrings, right? When are you training your hamstrings? When are you training your calves? Right? There's so many lacking muscle groups and movements altogether. In calisthenics, a lot of people don't even do horizontal pull-ups. So you're not even getting that horizontal pull movement. Your rear delts end up lacking a lot. Your traps end up lacking. Side delts end up lacking. And your upper chest. So is that more functional? Of course not. Not in my personal opinion. Whereas in bodybuilding, you're training every single movement. So that's what makes it seem functional. So in my opinion, it is functional. It is functional for everyday life, not necessarily for sports. So if you're an athlete, you wouldn't necessarily dwell on bodybuilding just for, your sport, whatever sport it is. If you're playing basketball, football, whatever. If you're a fighter, it's not necessarily functional. However, everyday life, I'd actually argue it's one of the most functional ventures to go into. As long as you don't lack mobility work. With more muscle, more tightness, more stiffness might come, right? So if you make sure that you work on your mobility, there's that typical kind of joke, meme of a bodybuilder can't get something off their back. If you work on your mobility, you're a lot more flexible. It probably is the most functional venture out of every single athletic or sports venture. Leave me your thoughts in the comments. What's your views on this? If you want a bodybuilding training plan, check out my website for my Backy Physique of Greatness training plan. It's literally 12 weeks of dedicated bodybuilding. Check that out. It's on my website. Along with that, you can check out Calisthenics, which is the calisthenics bodybuilding program where you can build muscle with just your body weight and minimal equipment. But if you have all the equipment, you go to the gym, check out Backy Physique of Greatness. It's Beautiful Flex, and I'm out.